Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our apologies for being a little late today morning. A very warm and heartfelt greetings to each and every one of you in this magnificent setting. I am Nar Bahadur Khatiwada, Regional Program Coordinator for Asian Pacific Region from the International Solar Alliance. And it is my great honor and privilege to stand before you today as we gather here at the Asian Clean Energy Forum in Manila, the deep dive workshop session on solarizing sustainability, clean energy collaborative action for Asia and Pacific. Organized jointly by the Asian Development Bank and the International Solar Alliance. The deep dive workshop serves as a platform for us to explore the immense potential of solar energy and its pivotal role in catalyzing our sustainable energy transition. It also stands as a testament to the power of international collaborations and incredible contributions it can make towards achieving our shared vision and goals of sustainable development and clean energy transition towards a net zero by 2050. Solarizing sustainability. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank and the International Solar Alliance, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you coming from various corners of the world to share your expertise and insight in shaping a sustainable future. Without further ado, now I would like to invite our eminent speakers to take seats on the dais for the opening session of the panel. So may I now invite Mr. Joseph Wycliffe, the Chief Operating Officer of International Solar Alliance. Please. Dr. Priyanta Vijayatunga, Chief Energy Sector Group, Asian Development Bank. Sir, please. Mr. Dinesh Kumar Gimire, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Nepal. Mr. Omping Liu, Director, Energy Division, UN Escape. Sir, please. And our special invitee, the keynote speaker, Mr. Ali Majid, Deputy Minister, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, Maldives. Thank you, Excellencies. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Joseph Wycliffe to present his opening remarks, welcome remarks, sorry, for highlighting partnerships, the need of the hour and developing concrete strategies that will accelerate the transition to clean energy systems in Asia and Pacific, and the role of solar energy in the current context and for the future sustainability. Joseph Wycliffe, please.
Good morning. His Excellency, Mr. Ali Majid, Deputy Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Technology for Maldives. His Excellency, Dr. Priyanta Vijayatunga, Chief of Energy Sector Group, Asian Development Bank. Mr. Dinesh Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation from Nepal. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once again a warm good morning to all of you. On behalf of ISA and ADB, a partner and a co-host, it is my great pleasure and delight to welcome you all to this deep dive workshop on solarizing sustainably, catalyzing clean energy collaboration across Asia and the Pacific. We are highly honored to co-host this significant event alongside our esteemed partner, the Asian Development Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, the global energy landscape, as we all appreciate, is rapidly changing. And we as nations and businesses are at risk of being left behind as the world continues to wrestle with a climate change dilemma. How we mitigate the impacts of man-made climate change while delivering the energy results to societies and economies and communities will decide on our success outputs. And in delivering through Asian communities and countries, it will be critical to deliver effective solutions with global implications while ensuring energy security across the geographies we operate. But one thing good is that we already see encouraging signs of shifting global landscape. The Science Based Targets Initiative notes that in 2019, the net zero pledges covered only 16% of the economies within the area. However, the latest results, if you fast forward to today, indicate 90% framing of our economies framing towards a remarkable transformation in global attitudes towards addressing climate change. So if you go to see the situation's ripe, and organizations like the International Solar Alliance, being an action-oriented, member-driven collaborative platform, works towards increased deployment of solar energy technologies as a means for bringing energy access in a just and inclusive manner across all nations, member states, and communities we work. We in ISA strive to develop and deploy cost-effective transformational energy solutions powered by nature, and that is the sun, to help our member states to develop low-carbon growth trajectories with a particular focus on delivering impact in countries categorized as small island development states and the least developed countries. We have worked with multilateral agencies, including MDBs, which is Asian Development Bank, our partner here today. Also, DFIs, private and public sector organizations, civil society, and other international institutions that we partner with. While working in collaboration with partnership, we can already see the shifting commitments because of the inroads these partnerships have made. So while we deep dive, it's very important as to how we focus on the partnerships factor in being able to transform. Furthermore, Asia-Pacific nations have disproportionately affected by natural disasters, and partnerships require us to focus on this. So today's workshop will be important on how we look at partnerships impacting climate change and crisis management. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to all of you participants, and I'm confident that this workshop will serve as a platform for meaningful dialogue, collaboration, and action towards a cleaner, greener, and more resilient Asia-Pacific region. Your presence here today is a testament of your commitment to sustainable development, and I look forward to valuable insights and outcomes that will emerge through our discussions. Thank you, and wishing you all a fruitful discussion today.
Thank you, Mr. Wycliffe, for highlighting the encouraging signs of success in addressing climate change and the need of the hour and developing concrete strategies that will accelerate the transition to clean energy systems in the Asian Pacific. Now, may I invite Dr. Priyanta Wijatunga, Chief Energy Sector Group, Asian Development Bank, to present his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Good morning to all of you, Your Excellencies, senior officials from our developing member countries, distinguished invitees, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me warmly welcome you to this deep dive workshop on solarizing sustainability, catalyzing clean energy collaborative action in Asia and the Pacific on this final day of the Asia Clean Energy Forum. Over the years, this remarkable event, ASF, we call it in short form, has served as a platform uniting all stakeholders in the energy sector, where we share knowledge and experience for the benefit of the mankind. I'm convinced that with our presence here today, this year's ASF will be no exception, and we will have that level of wealth of knowledge and insights and experience shared. I'm sure you will recall this over and over again as you go back to your own countries and implement whatever you learn from here in your practice in your own countries. The theme of ASF this year resonates powerfully, navigating towards a carbon neutral future through clean energy solutions. This theme encapsulates our vision to embark on a collective journey towards a shared sustainable future. As we march forward, it is very clear that transitioning to renewable energy is not just an option, but an absolute necessity. We at the ADB continue to be concerned of our country's dependence on fossil fuels in various forms, in various subsectors of energy. This has become even a bigger concern because Asia-Pacific region is the most vulnerable region to climate change. We cannot address such massive issues alone. Collaboration and partnerships are essential when it comes to addressing these massive challenges like the climate change. That's why we at ADB are proud to be partnering with the International Solar Alliance and their leadership in the sector, and their unwavering commitment to promoting clean energy transition. Our partnership with ISA has been a great success. ADB ISA Technical Assistance Program, which we started a few years ago, broadly covers project pipeline development activities, obviously in solar subsector, identification of financial instruments for the common risk mitigation mechanisms, capacity building, and knowledge exchange. Under this program, scoping studies have been conducted in the solarization of the health and agriculture sectors in the 6 target South Asian countries. The program is also supporting ISA to develop a program of green hydrogen. This is obviously the fuel for the future, particularly considering industrial and transport sectors where hydrogen probably the only option available. Of course, green hydrogen, not just hydrogen. On our part, ADB's commitment to energy transition goes beyond financial assistance. We are also dedicated to sharing knowledge, best practices, and technical expertise to support the development and implementation of renewable energy projects across the Asia-Pacific region. By fostering an ecosystem that encourages collaboration, innovation, and risk sharing, we aim to create an environment where investors feel empowered to participate and contribute to the renewable energy revolution. Under this TA, ADB and ISA have jointly conducted multiple webinars, workshops, and events at climate summits like Conference of Parties. A high-level conference on new technologies for clean energy transition was held on the sidelines of ISA assembly last year, and in this, nearly 10 new technologies and solar energy in the solar energy sector were presented. We are very honored to have the opportunity to collaborate with ISA on the second edition of the conference during the 6th session of the ISA assembly in November this year. In conclusion, I once again extend my heartfelt welcome to all of you. It is great to see this gathering of brilliant minds representing diverse perspectives and expertise. I would like to thank especially the ISA Secretariat and other senior government officials joining this session today. Throughout this workshop, we would love to hear wealth of insights and wisdom you will share, from innovative technologies to groundbreaking policies that will shape our collective journey towards a carbon neutral future. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Wajitonga, for your excellent opening remarks. The partnership between Asian Development Bank and the International Solar Alliance is indeed an epitome of international organization and the commitment to energy transition, particularly for the vulnerable South Asia region, with special focus on LDCs and SEDs, as you have so appropriately highlighted. Now, may I invite our Honorable Secretary, Mr. Dinesh Kumar Gimire from the Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigations, to get more insights into the region, particularly from the perspective of Nepal.
Distinguished keynote speakers, all the delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I wish to congratulate ADB and ISA for putting together this wonderful deep dive session. I'd like to thank the organizers for providing me this opportunity to share our experiences from Nepal in scaling up solar energy through appropriate policies, strategies, and programmatic interventions. Nepal is a landlocked country blessed with abundant water resources, sunshine, and natural beauty. Nepal is rich both in hydropower and solar energy. By tapping these renewable energy resources, Nepal can meet the national goals of SE for all, SDG, NDC, and also supply the clean energy in the region. The installed capacity in Nepal has crossed 2,700 megawatt. However, electricity and other renewable energy sources constitute only around 7.6% of the total energy mix, which still heavily relies on traditional and imported fuels. The energy consumption by fuel types in 2021 shows the dominance of traditional energy with 66% share, and that of imported fuels reached 27%. Most of our hydro projects are run-of-the-river types, and the generation from them during the dry season is low. Solar can reduce the dry season interruptions and explosive imports. Through a combination of visionary policies, strategies, and regulations, and innovative program interventions, Nepal has made significant progress in solar PV technologies and applications, particularly in the areas of solar mini-grids, solar home systems, solar water pumping systems, solar rooftop systems, and grid-connected solar power plants. Alternative Energy Promotion Center under the Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation is serving as the nodal agency for Government of Nepal on renewable energy and energy efficiency. AEPC has been supporting the off-grid electrification through solar energy and other renewables. Lately, AEPC has also been supporting for installation of grid-connected renewable energy and solar rooftops, which has significantly contributed to increase the reliability of energy supply in the system. Some of the key achievements to highlight in this area include something like 974,000 individual standalone solar PV systems, 2,130 kilowatt of solar mini-grid system, 3,817 institutional solar PV system, and some 3,000 small-scale solar drinking water and irrigation projects, and 10,000 kilowatt rooftop solar PV systems are some of the achievements that we have already made. To date, 75 megawatt of various solar power projects are already connected to the grid. Construction license have been granted for 133 megawatt for solar projects, and survey license have been granted for another 1,244 megawatt. Recently, NEA has made call for bids for 100 megawatt of grid-connected solar projects at 16 specified locations with a benchmark tariff of 4.6 cents. Nepal has implemented the policy interventions to incentivize the solar energy. Some of the legal guidelines for that are the Grid Connected Alternative Electricity Development Guidelines, Renewable Energy Subsidy Policy Guidelines, Central Renewable Energy Fund Operation Guidelines, and Fiscal Act that has provisions of only 1% customs duty and exemption of VAT components of solar energy systems. Furthermore, the policy initiatives such as Every Home, Energy Home, Every Settlement, Energy Settlement have been taken by the government. Likewise, Solar Mini-Grid Program targeting mountainous and hilly regions, solar water pumping for drinking and irrigation, grid-connected solar rooftop with net metering and net payment system, 200 megawatt solar energy projects in Madhya province, Sustainable Energy Challenge Fund to develop up to 500 kilowatt solar energy projects are some of the other achievements that we have already made. As we reflect on Nepal's progress in scaling up solar through appropriate policies, regulatory measures, and program interventions, it is evident that their success lies in a multifaceted approach. Key factors such as political commitment, multi-stakeholder collaboration, capacity building, and financial incentives play the key role in development of solar energy and hence in sustainable energy transition. To accelerate the adoption of solar energy, we must continue to advocate for conducive policy environments, foster public-private partnership, strengthen research and development, and empower local communities. We need to make joint efforts among all the concerned stakeholders to overcome the challenges and to stay focused in achieving our goals. As Nepal has recently been a member of International Solar Alliance, and it has already been tabled in the Parliament for ratification. Nepal has been participating in various meetings and discussions with ADB and ISA to initiate ISA activities in Nepal. Through the development of solar energy, we can drive sustainable development, combat climate change, and create a brighter, cleaner future for generations to come. I thank ADB for inviting me to share our perspective in this August gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gemire, for providing insights from Nepal, particularly highlighting hydropower constraints in the rain flow season during winter months and emphasizing our coherent policy and regulations, including sharing glimpses of solar energy program in strengthening energy diversification and ensuring energy security in Nepal. Thank you. The multilateral organizations play a very important role in international cooperation and address global challenges. The UN Escape serves as the United Nations regional hub for promoting cooperation among countries in pursuit of equitable socio-economic development. To provide us an insight on the convergence of UN Escape objectives with the area of focus, Solarizing sustainability, with this workshop, may I now invite Mr. Wumping Liu, the Director, Energy Division of Escape, to provide his special remark.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished guests. On behalf of United Nations Economic and Social Commission, it's my pleasure to speak at this event. And I would like to express my thanks to the International Solar Alliance for inviting ESCAP to speak at this event. So as the previous speaker already mentioned, the growth of solar power in the Asian Pacific region has been very impressive in recent decades. Despite the impacts of COVID-19, countries in our region have added significant levels of solar PV generation to their portfolios. In 2021, the aggregate solar PV generation in Asia Pacific reached over 500 gigawatts. In fact, solar PV is a key driver of renewable energy capacity, addition outpacing other forms of renewable energy. There has been a significant innovation across the region in the application of solar power. From rooftop solar to floating solar and combining solar generation and agricultural development, as well as poverty reduction. So the event will discuss many of these innovations today, so I look forward to learning this kind of progress. However, much more needs to be done. To realize the SDG 7 and meet the climate targets set under the Paris Agreement, we need to install increasing amount of renewable energy technologies and products. In fact, despite the record-breaking investment over the last several years, we need to do much more. By 2030, we need to triple this investment in order to stick within the 2 degrees centigrade pathway under the Paris Agreement. Therefore, the innovation in technology also needs to be matched by similar innovation in finance and investment. To unlock the full benefits of solar PV, we must deploy it alongside complementary technologies. For example, the decreasing cost of battery storage and efficient appliances make it easier to cost-effectively deploy off-grid and microgrid solutions. So large-scale solar technology can also help rapidly decarbonize the power sector and power system, but require additional investment in grid infrastructures for transmissions. So here I would like to highlight cross-border power system connectivity as one of the key to enable, to accelerate deployment of solar PV, in particular the large-scale solar PV. Hydropower in Bhutan and Nepal, for example, can help the balance of solar resources in India and Bangladesh if a cross-border power system connectivity is enhanced. So solar energy has also particular financing challenges. It's capital intensive and more exposed to higher cost of capital. Strategies are needed to unlock climate finance and lower the cost of finance, particularly for the developing countries or in our region. I'm very glad to see that this is one of the subjects for today's discussion. I hope this kind of a discussion will help to accelerate the process to deploy large scale for solar technology. So the key focus of SCAP energy program is to support member countries in the achievement of SDG 7. So in this effort, the expansion of renewable energy sector is central among the SDG 7 target. So solar energy is playing a crucial role in boosting renewable energy output across the region. So many countries are turning to solar PV as a technology for renewable power generation due to its falling cost, widespread applicability, and the strong solar resources we see across most countries of our region. But solar PV is also a key technology for provision of access to electricity in remote areas, another key part of SDG 7 challenges, where it plays an important role. At SCAP, we are glad to work on these topics and other topics with the International Solar Alliance and also with the Asian Development Bank and other development partners. So under our recently renewed MOU with the International Solar Alliance, as well as through the Green Grid Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid, or GGI OSWAC, we also lead the initiatives of Asia Pacific Working Group, which includes both ISA and ADB as active members. So with this remark, I look forward to hearing the perspectives and the experience of Asia Pacific countries in how solar can support the sustainable energy transition. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, the Director, Energy Division, SK, for your impressive highlights on solar PV growth in Asia and Pacific, surpassing even OECD countries. However, again, highlighting much work to be done in scaling large-scale solar technologies, promoting storage, while moving ahead in decarbonizing the energy sector in Asia and Pacific region. Thank you so much. Now we are very privileged to have with us the esteemed Honorable Deputy Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Technology, Government of Maldives, Mr. Majid Ali, who is best positioned to emphasize the crucial role of governments in driving sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, let's invite Honorable Minister Mr. Majid Ali to deliver his keynote address in this workshop. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Priyantha Vijatunga, Chief of Energy Sector Group, Asian Development Bank, Mr. Joshua Wycliffe, Chief Operating Officer, International Solar Alliance, Mr. Dinesh Kimre, Secretary, Ministry of Energy, Water, Resource and Irrigation, Nepal, Mr. Hongpeng Liu, Director, Energy Division, United Nations Environment and Social Commission for Asia Pacific. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the International Solar Alliance and the Asian Development Bank for inviting to address a deep dive workshop on solarizing sustainability, catalyzing clean energy collaborative action in Asia and Pacific. I am delighted to see a diverse representation and multi-stakeholder participation to deliver, to explore future of solar technologies in our region and identify opportunities for collaboration. As we are aware of the Maldives as a low-lying island nation, heavily reliant on tourism, faces significant challenges for climate change. Rising sea level, extreme temperature, and shift in global tourism trends threaten our economy. Additionally, our dependence on imported fossil fuel for energy consumption poses environment and economic risks. However, challenges by these externalities, we remain committed to sustainable future. We envision three pillars: energy efficiency, renewable energy, and technology innovations. Our goal is to provide sufficient, reliable, sustainable, secure, and affordable energy to the people of Maldives. Maldives depends on fossil fuel to power our economy, and therefore integration of renewable energy presents great opportunity, particularly in sector such as sea and land transport. We envision to developing energy efficient fleet and modern harbor infrastructure powered by renewable energy. Embracing electric vehicle and hybrid solar power in our transport sector will derive sustainability. Updating building codes to include rooftop solar panels and EV charging infrastructure will promote energy efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, currently with the support of the International Solar Alliance and the Asian Development Bank, we are currently updating our sector roadmap by aligning it with our net zero target to become carbon emission country in 2030. The update roadmap focuses on various renewable energy aspects, including the identification and development of solar energy projects, upgrading grid infrastructure, promoting floating solar projects, exploring new solar technologies such as solar powered marine transport and cold storage capacity development, and advocacy program beside ocean energy, biomass, and other renewable sources. These efforts aim to enhance energy access, reduce dependence on imported fossil fuel, and pave the way for the resilient and environment-friendly conscious future in Maldives. Therefore, solar energy emerges as a key solution for us. It offers a clean and abundant source of power that reduces greenhouse gas emission. However, the small dispersed nature of our islands put a lot of challenges in our effort of solarization and smart grid integration. It's not as easy as we imagine. Technology knowledge transfer and also addressing a huge resource gap toward transition into solar are required for developed countries and multilateral development banks such as ADB that can accelerate transition in Maldives. Especially today, specific focus areas will discuss on solar technologies such as solar mini grids, solar rooftops, and floating solar are great interest to Maldives and most of the countries in Asia Pacific region. I believe the panel will discuss the prospect challenges and the economic of scale and explore avenues for the improving policy regulation, technology, finance, and capacity, accelerate national targets such as NDCs and international commitment, especially while meeting SDG 7, SDG 13 targets. While moving ahead, collaboration among stakeholders is crucial. ISA and ADB working together with us to set a great example. By working together, we can bridge technology policy, financial gaps, and encourage greater investment flow in this sector. In particular, the Maldives, we aim to create an environment that fosters the widespread adoption of solar technologies, benefiting sectors such as resorts, fisheries, sea, and public transport. In conclusion, the Maldives recognize the urgency of transitions to sustainable energy. Solar energy provides us with a clean and abundant power source, enabling us to reduce greenhouse gases, emission, and building resilient future. I urge all the participants and stakeholders to actively participate in the discussion and utilize this workshop as a forum to foster collaboration, identify action points, and drive clean energy collaborative action in Asia and the Pacific and other seats. Thank you all. Thank you and the best wishes to all the panel members and speakers for a fruitful discussion. Once again, I would like to thank ADB and ISA for this opportunity. Thank you and have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Mr. Majid, for highlighting the climate change challenges and threat in Maldives. Despite this threat, a firm commitment of the government of Maldives in promoting and scaling renewable energy, including solar, floating, marine transport, and cold storage through collaboration and international partners such as ISA and ADB. Thank you so much. This brings us to the conclusion of the opening session. And now I'd like to invite all the dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, in thanking our eminent speakers, excellencies in the opening session for their insightful presentation with a huge applause. Thank you so much. Now we're moving to the next session. We have a short presentation on International Solar Alliance interventions in solarizing sustainability. So I'd like to invite now Mr. Ramesh Kumar, the Chief of Program and Project Implementation Cluster, International Solar Alliance, to provide a brief presentation on solar intervention in the Asian Pacific, more highlighting on this. Thank you, sir. Please, sir. Where's the presentation?
Okay. Is it? Yeah. It's not moving. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, very good morning. I'm Ramesh Kumar, Chief of Unit for the Programs and Projects in International Solar Alliance. Let me give a very brief of International Solar Alliance. It's a very, let me, if the slide shows the picture of background of ISA. This was actually, in fact, launched in 2015 jointly by Government of India and Government of France as in the sidelines of COP21 in Paris. The secretariat started functioning sometime in 2018, and then the real the activity started in 2019. Unfortunately, thereafter we had gone into the entire globe has gone into the lockdown. So, in a very short span of 2015 to 2023, if you look at the picture, today it's a alliance of 115 countries. So that gives a lot of confidence for us. Very short period of time, we reached a membership of 115 countries, representing all countries from all the regions, whether it is in Europe and the United States or in the Latin American countries and Asia Pacific and then Africa, encompassing all the regions, and we have 115 countries. Look at the ISM mission. I think we kept this in sometime in 2015-16. If you look at the target of 2030, the 1,000 gigawatt, but I think the globe has so much accelerated. We are closing that target. It very probably will be reaching this 1,000 gigawatt in the global level very shortly. So I think we need to revise this, put a more bigger ambition, thereby helping the countries to rapiding the entire program. So I think the key issues, of course, is the energy access, energy security, energy transition. These are the very key issues, which is very important for a sustainable growth and transition into a fossil-free world. To enable that, we have the three important pillars: analytics and advocacy, and which we have been across the countries. We have been already connected with the countries to see how solar can be accelerated, and through our analytics of getting the ease of doing solar reports, which brings out a introspection platform for the countries to look at their policies so that it can be scaled up. Capacity building is one of the important gaps which we have already seen, and then we are assisting the countries to do the capacity building both on institutional level as well as for the people.
and then the programmatic support, which we support the countries to scale up solar. Okay. Is it coming? Yeah. So this gives a very quick picture of where do we stand today. From 62 countries from 2019, today it is 115 countries. We have mobilized about 83 million US dollars as part of the funding efforts. We are supporting across almost 44 countries to scale up a totaling around 9.5 gigawatt of solar projects. We have already trained more than 3,073. In fact, the recent figures will be close to 4,000. For LDC Sun seats, we have 27 countries. We have the demonstration project, which are in progress. Some of them are already commissioned. And then the flagship reports we bring each year so that the countries benefit out of where do they stand and what are the technological advances happening in the solar sector. Okay, now how do we structure? So we have 9 programs across all spectrum of solar technologies, including a solar to make a affordable finance at a scale. In fact, the second session we will be covering that. Apart from that, it covers all the important applications, whether it is rooftop, mini grids, heating, solar heating and cooling, and solar PV battery, including the waste management part of it, which we are working on that. Solar for hydrogen, which is we are very closely working with ADB, and then the e-mobility and storage. Yeah. So far, there are under these demonstration projects, there are 10 projects under solar water pumping system across many countries, including in some of the countries in the Pacific Islands. There are 13 projects of rooftop in different 13 countries. We are also supporting one project on solar lighting in Samoa and solar cold storage, which is very interestingly, many countries are looking for supporting the agriculture part of it. And of these 7 projects have been commissioned, the rest are in the process of commissioning in next 3-4 months. We'll be commissioning this project. And this gives a lot of insights for us to see how do we scale up and what are the bottlenecks happening in those countries. So that will help in scaling up of these projects. Capacity building, I just talked about, it's more than 3,000 people. All the areas related to whether it is a grid connector projects or solar water pumping, mini grids, solar parks, and we have in fact for an entire West African power pool, we had a what we call the grid integration and solar park development. We had a successfully completed a program for the West African power pool of 13 countries so that they can replicate or they can take a lot of lessons from there. And we will be accelerating more and more such programs for capacity building. This is one area where we are trying to develop institutional setups in these countries in terms of what you call STAR-C. This is a solar technology application resource center, which is kind of a one-stop solution where the capacity building, testing and certification, research and development, creation of standards, and startup incubation. So we are setting up these, assisting countries to set up across different countries so that on country basis as well as in regional basis, it can serve as a center of excellence to take up all related to solar. Yeah. All these things can be delivered only through, we are very sure of this can be delivered through proper collaborative approach. And ADB is one of the biggest example where we are able to collaborate and push these programs in the Asian part of it. And we have across the regions, we have collaborations, and we are trying to, through this collaborative mode, we try to increase our reach to all these countries and help these countries. But I'm just talking about very in particular to IS and ADB. We are supporting these 6 countries to have the initial studies which is focusing on healthcare sector, solar pump at scale, deploying of solar pumps at scale, and floating solar, which will help these countries to scale up. We are also working on innovative financing instruments for scaling solar investment in Asian countries, along with the ADB. And the next session will be talking about that. And of course, capacity building and the new technology, which is very promising which is on green hydrogen. We are very collaboratively moving ahead. So shortly, we will be also launching a web portal, a center of excellence for hydrogen, where all the things across the globe will be captured there. So every country is updated what is happening in that. I think with that, I'm just closing this presentation. This gives an overview of the ISA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh Kumar, for the insightful presentation. In the interest of time, without any further ado, now we'll move to the next session, the core discussion session in this workshop. So I'd like to invite our eminent panel speaker to come onto the stage, please. Mr. Niral Mandal, Joint Secretary, Power Division, Bangladesh, and also the Honorable NFP of ISA. Mr. Ramprasad Dittal, energy expert from Nepal. Mr. Alamgir Morshid, Executive Director from ITCOL, Bangladesh. Engineer Ron Sinivaratne, General Manager, ECB Sri Lanka, and Ms. Sweta Kosi, Energy Analyst from UNDP. And also I'd like to request Mr. Ramesh Kumar, the moderator of the session. Okay. Now I would like to hand over to Mr. Ramesh Kumar to take the session.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Nar, for giving me the floor. So first of all, I'm extremely thankful to the dignitaries and the Honorable Deputy Minister from Maldives who have shared their thoughts in the inaugural part of this deep down workshop on advancing solar technologies and opportunities in Asia and the Pacific. Your vision and guidance will help ISA and the ADB to support the countries in the region for rapid scaling of solar technologies. Now let me welcome all the eminent panel of speakers here and the participants for a panel discussion on the topic. So I'm Ramesh Kumar Kurbat, currently the head of program and projects in ISA, and I have the privilege of moderating this session. I'm delighted to say that we have an eminent panel representing the key players who matters for accelerating solar programs, like the government officials, regulatory authorities, utility companies, financial institutions, UNDP, who will discuss and share their thoughts, experiences, and their recommendation on these critical topics. As we know, solar technologies have emerged as a crucial solution to address energy needs and sustainability goals in the region. With abundant sunlight resources, the Asia-Pacific region has the potential to harness solar power on a large scale, transforming its energy landscape. For this panel, in fact, today's we have prioritized 3 areas, which is on 3 solar technologies in this first discussion of panel discussion. Solar mini grids with batteries, 1, solar pumping system and floating solar, which we think which are the very key priorities for the region, and which will help in accelerating the clean energy deployment in the region. So with that, let me welcome once again Mr. Niroj Chandra Mandal, Joint Secretary, Renewable Energy Power Division, Ministry of Power, Energy and Mineral Resources, Bangladesh. Mr. Ram Prasad Detail, Energy Expert from the Nepal Electricity Authority. Mr. Alangir Morshad, Executive Director and CEO, Infrastructure Development Company Limited, ITCOL, Bangladesh. Engineer Rohan Senaviratne, General Manager, Ceylon Board, and Ms. Shweta Koshi, Energy Analyst from UNDP. The format will be, the format of the discussions would be, I would like to give 5 minutes each to each of the panelists to share their thoughts. And then if time permits, we'll have a last 1 minute kind of wrap up from the panelists. Thereafter, we can have a very short session with the audience for a short interaction. And then I will request also Mr. Sulakshana Jayawardene to conclude it. And I would, in fact, sir, why don't you come to the dais? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Please. So without any further delay, let me come to Mr. Niroj Chandra Mandal. So my small question to you, sir. Bangladesh has been in forefront in promoting the solar technologies, whether it is solar mini grid, solar pumping. And Bangladesh is keen to scale up floating solar. So would you share some of the thoughts, especially how government of Bangladesh is bringing out proactive policies and regulations to attract the investments and also the key challenges? So over to you, Mr. Mondal.
Thank you, Mr. Ramesh. Thank you for your nice presentation. And Bangladesh, you know, Bangladesh is a country of limited land, and Bangladesh has no other potential, more potential other than solar. The maximum generation, renewable energy generation from solar. And though the country is a land constraint, then we have a huge water body. Bangladesh is a delta, and Bangladesh is a riverine country. And based on the this potential, to use this potential, Bangladesh already, probably Bangladesh is the first country to sign the country partnership agreement between the International Solar Alliance to expand solarizing activities, the increase of solarization activity in the country. And in this, and you know, our desire is to generate 40% energy from renewable sources by 2041. But currently, our renewable energy position is not so good. Our generation is only 1.2 gigawatt from renewable sources. And most of the renewable energy from solar, that is 80%. Though a limited land and most of the land are agricultural, we have huge opportunity in floating solar. We have some barrier also, some challenges also. Many of the people in rural area depends on fishing, and we have another. We have some water body, stagnant water body. We have some canals, barrages, and we have huge spawn. So we can use this water body for floating solar. In IHA, there is a country partnership agreement. I have already mentioned. We have signed the country partnership agreement on this year, February this year, and ISA technical team already visited a floating solar area, and here ISA technical team already submitted the pre-feasibility report of this area. Recently, I provide 3 coordinates from different side to explore the floating solar, whether it is possible or not. Shortly, I will provide a technical team will visit that floating solar area, this area, and whether it is possible to implement a floating solar project or not. You will be happy to know that one of the private company in our country already installed about 1 megawatt of floating solar project in our rural area. This is a stagnant water body. And if the fishing and solar will be together, that will be a solution for our country. And then we can use in this time we can use our stagnant water body, which fishing is not done, and the water body, this water body or fishing is going on. If the fishing and floating solar can be environmentally viable, then will be the best solution for the Bangladesh. And I already mentioned that our renewable target is high, and we have to generate another 23 gigawatt by 2041. A huge investment is required for this purpose. I hope ISA with the development partners to invest to expand our solarization process. It is from mostly on solar, that is floating solar and other solar. Thank you. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Mondal. Yes, along with ISA and ADB, of course, we will be very closely. We have been very closely working with you. I think we will give all the support so that all these, especially the floating solar, also gets accelerated progress in Bangladesh. Many thanks for giving insights into that. Now let me come to Mr. Ram Prasad Dital, the energy expert from Nepal. Nepal has been taking various initiatives to accelerate clean energy solutions in the country. Can you please throw some light? What are those important areas where Nepal is focusing, and the constraints, and what is the kind of vision you have for the further accelerating that?
Thank you. Let me first, thank organizer for inviting me to, speak on this session. In fact, this session was supposed to be, handled by Mr. Kulman Gising. We had to, fly back to Kathmandu this morning. So, I have not yet thoroughly prepared this session, but based on my, experience as I was with Alternative Energy Promotion Center as the chief executive, I was also one of the regulator in the Regulatory Commission. So my deliberation is based on my, previous experience. Regarding the clean energy interventions initiatives in Nepal, as this morning, Ms. Honorable Secretary did very clearly elaborated the, activities that AEPC is undertaking in Nepal. I would like to focus on 3 areas. Number one, in terms of solar, in the total energy mix, if you see renewable or hydro and other renewables contributes around 6% in the total energy mix, whereas in the electricity sector alone, we are hydro dominated. Hydro contributes around 95%, whereas solar is very less. Solar contribution is about 5%. That too, mostly from off-grid. Meaning we have close to 1 million solar home systems, close to 4,000, as Mr. Secretary was mentioning. The total cumulative capacity is about 100 megawatt from solar in the off-grid area. That contributes around 3% in the total electricity, because we have around 2,700 megawatt installed capacity. 100 megawatt comes from off-grid. This is not injected in the grid. So that's why one part is to provide electricity in the areas where there is no possibility of grid extensions. The approach is to mobilize private sectors. We call it vendor sales approach. We identify vendors, select vendors based on their technical capacity, based on their financial capacity, based on their storage capacity, and also after sale service. So that's how one approach is to promote increase access in the areas where there is no grid through private sectors. This is one. We also have another approach that we call it community energy service provision model, where the program ADB or the World Bank or other development partners, they help establish, institutionalize the community energy service company, right? Not 100% led by private sector, but we encourage, we develop social capital, and then the community energy service company or the community-based organizations, they actually own the systems, they provide service, and based on their service, they actually, in the community or the users have to pay the tariff. So the tariff is being at the moment decided by, again, the community energy service provider. And the third one is basically the utility scale solar, where the modality is like hydro. The private sectors are selected, they are given license, and then they build, operate, own, and transfer. After the license period, that part close to 50 megawatt has been generated already. Yesterday also, this morning also, Honorable Secretary mentioned about the price-based competitions. This is a new initiative that Nepal government, the utility has started in Nepal. Unlike in other countries, we've already started, the reverse auctioning, the tendering thing. But in our part of the world also, we started, the price-based competitions. There is a price, right, the posted rate, and then we invite, private sector to participate in the process, and then the bids are selected. So this is another one is in the total, within another 5-6 years, our idea is to generate 15,000 megawatt, right? And the 10% has to come from non-hydro renewable. The solar has to, again, contribute in a big way there. If you see the project preparation list, close to 1.5 gigawatt, around 1,500 megawatt projects are already in the process. There are different stages of preparations, but so this is also happening there. The point that I'm making here is we have huge prospects. We're happy to partner with ISA through the Honorable Secretary also did mention about government's initiative, but there are a few issues I just would like to highlight here. One issue is we always talk about the pricing model, but in the area where people do not have options, they need to be supported. There probably we need to devise a incentive mechanism where the last mile people can afford the solar. Second one, in terms of when grid reaches there, we have mini grid. So when grid reaches there, it has to be synchronized. That part, the regulatory provision, regulatory mechanism, especially the technical and economic regulations, needs to be devised. So the newly established regulatory commission, I think they are working on it, especially in two areas. One is, you act as a generator, you also act as a consumer. When you promote, the community-based energy service company model or the rooftop model, you have two role. You produce energy, you at the same time, you also consume energy. How do you treat this? We have generation tariff and we have consumer tariff. So the difference at the moment, the net billing is a model where, the private sectors are not very, motivated. There probably we need to, make sure that they are also incentivized at the same time. The utility also feels, happy for that. And the final point, the government's vision is to actually diversify our energy mix. But because of economic scale, probably the cost is still high in our part of the world. So probably, you need to devise a mechanism where, the private sector and also the utility, we can, balance. And the final point is we are agro-based economy. Meaning our lands are scarce, right? And then if you promote, big solar projects in a fertile agricultural land, there is an issue already. So that's why we need to think of floating solar. We need to think of utilizing canal top. We need to think of utilizing our rooftop. So those issues, I think, are emerging issue. Probably with the cooperation, ADB and ISA cooperations, and with a strong commitment from utility as well as government, I'm sure we'll be able to address those issues. Thank you. I stop here.
Many thanks, Mr. Detail. Yeah, so this is very interesting points you have brought out, and we have started now the collaboration. I think we'll take it forward in a very focused manner. Many thanks for that. Now, I think we are also running out of time sometimes. So let me talk about financing, which is a very crucial role in technology promotion. And Bangladesh is known for bringing innovative financing instruments. So I would like to reach out to Mr. Alamgir Morshad from ITCOL to how this innovative financing is very crucial and how it can support the scaling of solar. Yeah, over to Mr. Alamgir.
Thank you and good morning. So I think in today's session, it's quite eminent to acknowledge that solar is gaining momentum across the region, and it is a need of the day. But as a financing institution, ITCOL, which is a government-owned entity, but we finance the private sector with the entire objective of engaging them into the solar movement, if I can say. As we understand that, across the region, I could talk about Bangladesh, as already mentioned by our Joint Secretary, that the amount of investment that we need is humongous. We're talking about $30 billion of investment required in renewable energy in Bangladesh itself. And we are talking about long-term, I've seen from the ISA presentation as well, that we need affordable long-term financing. That's a huge question. We can have great ideas, but if we don't have the money, if we are unable to engage the private sector in an economically viable project, it's very difficult to make that dream or aspiration real. So as ITCOL, we are a DFI. So we are funded by the development partners. We are supported by the government. So probably it's easier for us to go out into the market and provide long-term local currency funding. You see, the other problem is that while we are mobilizing a significant amount of fund from the development partners, but these are in foreign currency. So the question is for our borrowers is how do you manage the exchange risk? So the big question is how do you create a long-term local currency money market and debt capital market? That's the big question. We're working with ADB to create a bond market in local currency. We are talking about raising fund through an offshore taka, which is the local currency of Bangladesh bond, and engage investors beyond the banks. You see, the banks can only do so much. So I think the future looks much better. The ITCOL has been able to create a market where now the private players can engage. In last 1 year, because of the changes in the tariff in the conventional energy and power generation tariffs, we see that the solar and the alternative energy sources are becoming economically viable, and there's a lot of interest from the private sector to come into this market. And I think, if that becomes viable, we'll see the financial institutions also engaging. So I'm very optimistic. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Alamgir. So I think moving ahead, I think we'll closely work when we work with Bangladesh, and our second session on finance facility also is a one step in that direction which you talked about it. So we'll be discussing on that. Thank you very much. Now let me reach out to Mr. Rohan Senaviratne, the General Manager from Ceylon Electricity Board. Sri Lanka has been bestowed with a lot of solar power. And I think floating solar again is one of the areas, and you are also taking a lot of actions on rooftop and other things. Mr. Sulakshana has been interacting with me with the ISA also, so it was a great time to meet you here. Can you throw some light the perspectives of from your side how you wanted to scale up solar there in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, ADB and ISA, for inviting me for this panel discussion today. Sri Lanka approach to the deployment of solar has been a success. If I say our Their demand is approximately 2,700 megawatts, including roof solar, out of which 830 megawatt is coming from solar. Out of the 830 also, 700 megawatt is coming from roof solar. In the electrical energy mix of the country at present, solar provides 7% of the electrical energy for the country. So this endeavor started about 10 years ago, and we have adopted many successful business models to promote solar. So it has been a success story, and time does not permit to share it everywhere. But the approach was 4 business models. The first business model to promote solar was roof solar promotion. The second one was small scale, 75 kilowatt size, low voltage connected roof solar. The third business model was 1 to 10 megawatt size, medium voltage connected solar. The fourth business model was the large ones, the park caliber 100 megawatt and so on solar. Even if you take the roof solar, there are 4 business models that we are embarked on. So one is net metering, the second one is net accounting, third one is net plus, and the fourth one is net plus plus. So this net plus business model, I think, is a novel thing. Many of you may not have addressed that one. So that is any developer, any person who has a big roof, perhaps an industry or commercial establishment, they can just be a generator. They produce electricity and sell to the grid. There is no netting. So that's a complete business for a person. So that model we introduced, the Net Plus model. So it was a very success. Most of the commercial establishments came through that particular business model because it is a complete project based on a standard feeding tariff. So the roof solar story has been a very successful story. We developed up to 700 megawatts by now. Every year now we developed about 150 megawatts of roof solar additions. In addition to that, the other business models like the small scale ones, 75 kilowatt ones, then 1 to 10 megawatt ones, and the big ones, the park ones are also success. So our intention, the government policy is to go for 70% of power generation, electrical power generation in the year 2030 by renewable sources. In that case, the energy mix, as per the energy mix, 26% of electrical energy in the country should come from solar power. So from today until 2030, end of 2030, we have to construct around 3,500 megawatts of solar projects. It's substantial. And also the investments that is required from now up to 2030 is approximately 3.5 billion US dollars. So we have plans. We have a first plan up to 2026, the next plan from 2027 to 2030. So we have embarked on the first plan now, and we are successfully implementing the implementation of about 1,500 megawatts in the first plan up to 2026. The next plan, 2027 to 30, we should grid connect another 3,000 megawatts of solar projects. So that is a challenging area because of the grid stability issues and the transmission construction requirements, battery storage requirements, and the curtailment management. So a lot of challenges will come when we integrate large solar quantities from 2027 to 2030. But we have developed our plans. We are going ahead with our plans, going ahead with the improvements to the battery storage and the transmission networks and other requirements. So as a total, the solar is the solution for the future. We have to integrate as much solar as possible because that will give a lot of benefits to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has enough solar. So we, as a team with all the organizations together, embark on this journey. Up to now, it's a very successful story of 830 megawatts. So next 7 years also, we have to take a lot of efforts to bring additional about 3,500 megawatts of solar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rohan Sanaviratne. In fact, this is very, very heartening to note that you have been successfully accelerating it, which will also result in a lot of foreign exchange saving for the fossil fuels. ISA would also be very closely working with you with Sri Lanka so that we can help to more acceleration there. Many thanks to you. Shweta, sorry that I'm coming to the last, as his last speaker, but not as the least speaker. And you have been having a global level, you have been working, especially closely working with ISA, and also especially in the solar pumping system. So can you just share your perspectives from UNDP?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ramesh. I'd like to start by substantiating what everybody said about how much solar has grown. As per the latest GSR or Global Status Report, we have reached about 1,185 gigawatt of solar. In just the last year, we added about 243 gigawatt of solar, out of which 115 was in the decentralized form, which is what I want to talk about today. Access, about 200 million people have access to electricity because of this 115 gigawatt of decentralized. But today specifically, and in line with what Mr. Liu from UNESCAP said, we need to increase our investments in renewable energy, but focus on social protection and economic development. And towards this, I like to pitch the idea of distributed renewable energy for productive use. There are a lot of applications there. We have seen a lot of examples in India, we have seen it abroad, and there are applications in the agricultural value chain, in the textile value chain. We have even seen applications in pottery, in ceramics, in carpentry. So why am I pitching this, and why am I pitching this? Why am I saying that there is increased income, there is development associated with it, not just economic development, but socio-economic development. There's gender improvement that we have seen. And this is because of a few demonstration projects that we did in India between 2017 and 2019. We installed an IoT plus sensor-based solar water pump, and we in 2 fields that were 1 acre big, and they were growing okra and brinjal, or maybe you know it better as eggplant. And we realized that water was used efficiently, energy was conserved, and production was increased within the farming cycle. In addition to this, we also deployed something called solar cold storage that we've talked about a lot today. It benefited, like the standard 5 metric ton system, benefited as many as 20 to 25 farmers who were able to store it, sell it, and not have to sell it in the market when there was a glut, but they were able to store it in good conditions and sell it when they could get a better market price. In addition to this, we also solarized 4 different micro enterprises. We looked at agri-processing, we looked at millet processing, we looked at chili processing, we looked in the textile sector, we looked at face mask making, because this happened around COVID. We looked at sanitary pad making, because that would employ a lot of women, and a few others that because of paucity of time, I'm not going to go into. But again, the production increased significantly, the incomes increased significantly, and as a matter of fact, more women were employed. And I forgot to mention this, but all of these enterprises were operated by women-led self-help groups, and they had about 8 odd employees, but because they had more reliable electricity now, they were able to work in shifts, and they were actually 8 new people employed, so there were 16 people working in shifts. So based on this logic, and obviously everything wasn't easy and, smooth sailing, we realized there were a few challenges. And for this, we developed a more ecosystem-based approach, where we're looking at improving the governance and institutional systems. And this does not just mean policy and access to finance, but it also means getting the vendors closer to the beneficiaries, making sure they have easy access to the technology, replacements, maintenance, all of that. Training and capacity building, which is something ISR is helping us with, and I will get into that a bit later. And a host of things, right? If the vendor is going to the beneficiary over and over again, it builds confidence within these beneficiaries. So that level of ecosystem support is what we are looking at. Again, based on this ecosystem support, last year we deployed about 19 solar cold storage systems, and we decided to undertake standardized trainings for them on solar cold storage systems, and not just in technical operations, but also entrepreneurial operations. So they know how to make money out of just running that cold storage system. Again, some problems here. We try to train women, and this is a strange, maybe an India-specific thing, but the women refuse to be trained and certified in an activity that would give them a higher standing in their family. We found a way around this. You train both the women and the man and the wife, and we realized that the mobility issue, because women, there are safety concerns traveling to the training center, they were able to overcome it. They could share the responsibilities of running that solar cold storage system, and increased family income was translated to the children. Now, based on this idea, UNDP with ISA has developed a project on solar water pumping systems in 10 countries. Why 10 countries? Because ISA had released expression of interest. 22 countries responded with a huge demand. I think it was 273,000 pumps. Either ways, we picked the top 10 countries. We plan on demonstrating this ecosystem-based approach in these 10 countries, mostly in Africa, but we have Tuvalu in the Pacific, and we hope it succeeds. That's a quick brief. I hope I stay within the time.
Thank you, Shweta, giving the insights, and the women power has to be a very important thing in the entire spectrum of solar. I think we will work very closely on that. We'll accelerate our collaboration. I think this is the first level of all the panelists have spoken. We are running out of time, but I would like to reach out to Mr. Mandal, wanted to make one point. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to mention one thing. You have asked me the solar pumping.
Yeah.
We have finalized a solar roadmap, solar irrigation roadmap, with the assistance of ADB. And with this roadmap, we'll able to convert 45,000 diesel-operated pump to the solar irrigated pump by 2030.
Yeah.
And I think one question arising in your mind that our renewable capacity is only more than 1 giga now. We want to generate another 23 giga within 2041. In ISA partnership agreement, we mentioned that we will generate 4.5 giga by 2030. You will be amazing to know that in the couple of months, we have taken the huge number of projects. The capacity, the initial approval project, the capacity is more than 7 gigawatt. We are agreement signed between only a couple of months ago, but a couple of months we have initiated. Most of the projects are in solar, and this capacity is more than 7,000 megawatt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mandal, for giving that information. I think we are short of time for any questions to be taken from the panel. I think maybe during the tea break we can have more interactions on that. The panelists would be available. So I'm taking this liberty to reach out to Mr. Sulakshana Jayawardena, the Additional Secretary in the Presidential Secretariat of Sri Lanka. Yeah, I think you can, wherever you feel, you can come here. That's great.
Your Excellencies, government officials, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed pleasure for me to be here and make closing remarks of this fascinating discussion that we had. In fact, we are running short of time that we couldn't convert it into the active or get the views from the participants. But I felt that this is a very informative and fascinating discussion that we had with all the panel members. So thank you very much, ISA and also ADB for organizing this event parallel to the ACF 2023. We know that ISA is an organization where they promote member countries, they facilitate member countries to implement solar generation, solar applications, solar technologies. And as during the presentation, we saw that Sri Lanka is one of the countries that got the benefit from ISA. Thanks for the ISA, because I was working with ISA closely since 2015 to 2022. We got a lot of technical assistance, knowledge transfers from ISA. And I would like to highlight several points that we know that I would like to highlight two things. One is, if you can remember that COP21 in 2015, we had Paris. So 196 countries agreed to decrease their greenhouse gas emissions, right? COP26 Glasgow, we agreed to reduce reliance on fossil fuel, coal, in terms of meeting our energy requirements. So keeping that two key agreements that we agreed upon, development of solar with the assistance from various agencies like ISA and ADB, World Bank, all the development partners are together with us, helping Asian countries and Pacific countries, because most of the countries are very vulnerable and almost always in the first 20, including Sri Lanka. According to Green Climate Watch, Sri Lanka also among the first 20 countries in terms of vulnerability. So most of the other countries are also in that list or the category. So during the panel discussion and also the first part of this workshop, it was re-emphasized the having good policies. When I listen to these presentations made by the officials from South Asian countries, I observe that we all do have good policies. Yeah. Now we need to implement, or we need to achieve our set targets within the time frame. So ISA help, and also we discussed the key three things. One is solar pumping for agriculture. In fact, in Sri Lanka, there are more than 500,000 numbers of diesel pumps farmers use for pumping. So we can replace those things with solar. Yeah. But there are some difficulties, there are some challenges we need to overcome collaboratively. And also floating solar. Now we are about to, or we are in the process of implementing 2 pilot scale floating solar projects. In Sri Lanka, there are more than 1,300 water bodies. We can't say that we can use all the water bodies for solar generation, floating solar generation, but still we can develop floating solar projects because of the challenges described by the panel members, land constraint of the lands, and other issues. So considering the time, I try to cut short my speech. So it's certain that all the countries are working to safeguard people from the uncertainty and progressively dangerous environment, ensuring everyone, we know that we do have right, everyone can have the right to live in a healthy, pollutant-free environment without negative impacts of climate change. I hope that we will be able to achieve our targets and overcome these challenges in coming days, coming months, coming years. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Mr. Sulakshana Jayawardena, for giving these closing remarks. Sorry that we started late, bit of late, and then we had to wrap it up. But I think we had a all perspective from all our countries, and this partnership of ISA and ADB should help these countries to accelerate this solar and solar related technologies. And I'm sure this collaboration will be scaled up. So with that, I'm wrapping up this session on the solar technology deployment. And so many thanks to the audience. Sorry that we couldn't take some questions, but I think there is always a possibility to discuss more on that. So many thanks to all the participants and all the panelists. Many thanks.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Keshan. So, first of all, before go for the welcome address, I would like to invite panel members and the moderator to be on the stage. So today our moderator is Dr. Sujata Gupta, Director, Energy Division, East Asia, ADB. And our panelist, Mr. Santosh Singh, Intel Cap Advisory, Mrs. Jenny Koy, GCAP Investment Advisor for Asia, Mr. Arsalan Ali, ADB Ventures, Mrs. Joliet Liusink, Senior Investment Officer, EIB, Mr. Alamgir Morshed, CEO, Infrastructure Development Company Limited, Bangladesh. For the first item, I would like to invite Mr. Joshua Wycliffe, COO, International Solar Alliance, to be on the stage. Thank you. Please, over to you, sir, to deliver the welcome address.
Hello again. Distinguished panelists here with me on the stage, and all participants here. I warmly welcome you on behalf of our Director General for the International Solar Alliance and the International Solar Alliance team to this panel session. And as we discussed in the last session, and of course the opening, Southeast Asian nations face the daunting task of maintaining economic growth targets and at the same time meeting the energy needs of growing populations while also adhering to ambitious clean energy targets set by the governments. I come from a government background, and I continue to work for intergovernmental agency, which is ISA. So the ambitious targets that the governments have set, and again, the ambitious targets set in terms of economic growth, poses a major growth challenge and also at the same time commitment challenge towards how to bring in carbon neutrality while achieving economic growth. I wish to emphasize that the momentum witnessed in the past decade, which has initiated a paradigm shift in our energy system, charting a transformative course for the years to come, we've reached a no return point. And the discourses surrounding energy transition for a net zero economy. If you look at the investments going into various parts, various geographies, and we at ISA have addressed and have seen how unprecedented we have towards the momentous milestone that we have seen in terms of global energy transition. And we've reached an investment which has been unprecedented. We call it a pinnacle of investment position of $1.1 trillion, which shows a 31% increase. These paint a rosy picture, but the thing is the distributed investment across the geographies are not the same. If you take Africa, for instance, where 80%, the amount, the resources available is about 80%, yet the amount of investment that's gone is just about $1 trillion as against $19 trillion internationally. So and if you look at Asia again, where global over 40% of the population exists and the growth in investments have been increasing, there are markets which are developed and the developing nations, and if the disparity between the developing nations and the developed nations is huge. So here we are today in being able to address it. And International Solar Alliance has had two premier products. One is the Solar Finance Facility, which will be my colleague, Ms. Pragya Gupta, would present to it. She's a specialist from that area. We also have a SolarX, which is a startup challenge, grand challenge program that we have. She'll be talking about it as well. So we look at a blended finance model, which can go into facilities as a facility into investors and developers, providing risk mitigation, providing investment guarantees, and also risk management, insurance premium support and the likes for a hand-holding period, so investors can come in with a lot more confidence and invest into businesses. So it all shows how important it is that we put in. So right now, this is being very successfully run in Africa. At some stage, my colleague would be looking at also expanding into the Asian region, Southeast Asia region as well. I'll allow her to talk more, but let me welcome you all and the views that you're going to bring into this session. And also, let's hope that we have some time secluded for a lively interaction. Otherwise, it becomes just one way. We'd like to hear from you as well. So welcome again, and hope we can have a great time together talking about our futures in energy transition and the success that we would like to see and where we would like to reach. Thank you.
Indeed, we have to keep live interaction each other's. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Joshua, COO, International Solar Alliance. Our next item, a special presentation on Global Solar Facility and SOLEX Startup Challenge. I would like to invite Mrs. Pragya Gupta, RM and Financial Specialist, International Solar Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. So today I would be presenting about the two flagship products of ISA, which is the Global Solar Facility and also the Startup Challenge. But before I move on to the two flagship products, let me talk you through about what the International Solar Alliance is all about. As you can see, this is an alliance or an intergovernmental association of 114 member countries. And as we speak, proud to say that Singapore has also joined in the alliance 3 days back. Also, we're working on a mandate of mobilizing USD 1 trillion till 2030. And when I say mobilizing, we're working on 3 pillars of capacity building, analytics and advocacy, and programmatic support. When I talk about how we're mobilizing resources, one, we're working with different countries through the national focal points and ministries on ground. We're looking at different stakeholders, which is the private sector. We're working with new startups, that is the program that I'm going to be speaking about, and also looking at decentralized solar on ground. How we're doing it by investing in people, we're investing in policies, and we're also talking about various modifications of the processes. This is the theory of change that ISA is working on. We're working on all 3 aspects of energy access, transition, and security by, of course, looking at the 3 pillars of capacity building, of programmatic support, and analytics and advocacy. And I would like to thank ADB and various partners that we have on dais today as well, ranging from GAP, which is one of the biggest donors that ISA has. We also have EIB, who we're working with for the Global Solar Facility. We have the World Bank, and we have the European Union, who we're working with very closely. But now let me talk about the 2 financial products. The Solar Facility aims to catalyze solar investments in Africa. We're working with different donors, and we're working on 3 basic products of solar investments, solar insurance, and the Solar Payment Guarantee Fund. The Solar Payment Guarantee Fund will be a 100 million fund, which will look at creating bankable projects in Africa. We also have the solar insurance fund to the likes of USD 50 million. And we have the solar investment fund, which will be a USD 100 million fund with a TA component of 10 million. This structure talks about the parent facility, wherein we have a parent co-company, wherein we have a CEO and a board of directors from across the world. This will have a little component in the African facility that we have already announced during COP27. Moving on, we will be launching it in Africa, in Asia, and the LACs moving forward. This slide talks about the seed capital and the role of various stakeholders in the global solar facility. As you can see, the parent vehicle sits in the center where ISA would also be contributing in terms of creating a bankable pipeline of projects. We have the likes of various investors, both the general partners and limited partners, ranging from EIB, the JEF, the CEDA fund, and then also KFWs and the GCF. And then we have the countries who would be making a direct contribution to the facility. Of course, one of the major things that comes to mind is that, is it going to be another facility in the world pool? The USP of this facility is that we're looking at solar. So we are already providing a bankable pipeline of projects through ISA member countries. And at the same time, we're creating a list of investors across the world who would be investing it by ISA coming in as a safety net. These are some of the potential locations that we have been exploring for the facility. We've got Mauritius, we've got Luxembourg, Netherlands, and also looking at the gift city, which has tax implications as well. The second product that I'm going to be talking about is ISA's SolarX Grand Challenge. One of the things that we launched while announcing the facility was that the bankable projects in this global solar facility were looking at decentralized solar. There were new and very small innovations in African solarscape, which we wanted to fund as well. Through this global startup challenge, we are attracting global investments in new and innovative products in Africa. And we're also looking at enhancing the capacities of people on ground through promoting innovation. This was also launched last year during COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. This slide talks about the process flow. We launched the Startup Challenge in November 2022, and we also have Mr. Arsalan from ADB Ventures here who would be talking about the startup space later on. The call for applications for SolarX was announced in December. The startups had 3 months to talk about how the process is going to be held. We're shortlisting entries right now, and happy to tell you that we had a milestone of 100, but we received 180 applicants from across Africa. The winners would be declared during the G20 meeting in July during India's presidency, and we would be launching the second leg of SolarX Startup Challenge during COP28. This slide talks about the various capacity building sessions that we've done on ground. Ranging from on-ground sessions in Kenya, in South Africa, and also in Egypt. So this slide presents the quants. Like I said, we've received 180 applicants from 28 countries. The shortlisting process, we've got technical reviewers from across the globe. We've got 180 applicants, which were shortlisted into 50, and now we're down to 20. And we would be providing them with a cash incentive of 15,000 USD plus an accelerator program that they would be a part of. As next steps, of course, we're looking for collaborators. We would be hand-holding the startups and at the same time launching, like I said, the next startup leg in COP28. I'm happy to tell you that we've already received a lot of requests in terms of donor intent who would want to support both the startups and also the solar facility. Thank you very much, and happy to take questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the audience? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gupta. So I would like to invite Dr. Sujata Gupta to start the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're running a little behind schedule, and I have a school teacher-like mentality. So please help me keep the program on track. We had planned for audience interaction, so we will try and accommodate that. So without much ado, we have an extremely experienced, talented, and diverse panel here. And what I liked about this session was the name, Solarization Sustainability. So that's with this interesting concept. Let me move to my first panelist, Santosh, who's the Managing Director for Intel CAP Advisory. And he's the head of Energy and Climate Change Division, where he brings over 15 years of experience in developing markets. And his expertise lies in energy access, climate change, resilient agriculture, and climate finance. So prior to joining IntelCap, he worked with the World Bank and GIZ and has authored numerous publications on energy access and base of the pyramid markets. His current organization is a fund building on enabling ecosystems, channeling capital for a sustainable and equitable society. So, Santosh, you're doing all this through blended financing. Can you highlight your innovative products and some initiatives in Asia, including some work that you've been doing with ADB?
Good morning, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. I think I have been here many times, but solarizing sustainability is very fancy topic, and I think Mr. Joshua put a right context for that. I'll be on how financing and the interventions are needed. I think that part is almost taken care of. I'll just give you one example of solar sector that probably we miss. We talk about the risk perception. We're doing some research, and we came to know that if you are investing into Germany in solar, the return expectations are 7%. If you're investing in India, 17%. If you are investing in Argentina, 53%. Now, it's the same activity, same kind of technology, but the return expectations differ drastically. Now, that's where the blended finance, a different financing approach is critical, because economics differs from different location, different activities, different segments. We talk about solar in, so this was the approach that we have been doing in our own approach. So I'll just take one line to introduce. I think ma'am did a very good job summarizing a lot of things, but Aviskar Group manages $1.2 billion. We invest into a number of impact ventures. At the same time, we have advisory business, we channelize capital, and we have channelized more than 1 billion through different transactions across the globe in impact. All of this learning also enables us to work with different partners and help them develop similar facilities. So we are working with ADB and ISA to, on the solar facility that Pragya just talked about. We were the partner to conceptualize it, and we are working with ADB to have a similar kind of facility for Asia. Now, where the innovation comes, I think, as I talked about, the risk perception is the most critical thing in the stopping the capital to flow. So that need to be addressed. This gets talked in a very different way. Somebody talks about the currency risk, somebody talks about the country geopolitical risk, but you are talking about minimizing risk. Now, minimizing risk is probably the single most priority for any of the development ecosystem partners that we have seen, and they are working on that. Private capital is very prone to go to those areas which are less risky and give better returns. So we need to ensure that for whatever matter. Now, how we can ensure that? We have been working, and I'm synthesizing the work that we have done from multiple partners, and some part of that is coming from the ADB facility that we are working on. One, we need to minimize the risk from the economics point of view. So what are the economic risks of the project? Just look at that and make it attractive to the investors. Second, we want to also build the capacity of the different partners who are working in that ecosystem. So technical assistance, policy, etc. That's good. Third becomes how you are going to bring the pipeline of investable projects. Sometimes we have done that, but the pipeline is not there. The facility exists, the pipeline is not there. Now, all of this requires a very different approach. You cannot take a commercial pool of capital and address this. And that's where the blended finance comes into picture. You need to leverage different pools of capital. These pools of capital can range from purely grant to commercial capital. I would classify them into three categories. One is commercial capital that we know. Second one is a DFI capital, which is more inclined to take a riskier position and enable that. And the philanthropic capital that is looking to even let go of that capital itself to enable something big. Now, these facilities we have been designing, and there are three guiding principles that we have for such kind of facilities. One is that you should be very clear that what is the core purpose of the facility. Is it going to lower the cost of capital? Probably not. There's so much capital required that a facility of $50 million, $100 million is not going to achieve that. Just to give you a sense of where we are, if we deploy every penny that we have with all the DFIs, we will just address 10% of the climate capital need of the world. So it's beyond our capacity. So what happens that these facilities are aimed to leverage private capital. Every dollar invested in the facility, how much we can leverage. So can $1 leverage $30, $40, and that's the goal we are chasing. Second is that the judicious mix of the right kind of instrument. I think Mr. Joshua talked about the kind of initiative we are doing. Sometimes even a basic system that paying the premium of insurance is challenging can enable a lot of capital, because that's the third part is that the facilities should only focus on those segments which are really looking for that kind of intervention. Solar is a mix of different kind of segment, different geography. Some have achieved the commercial scale. Some are capable of attracting commercial capital on that. So I think these 3 points we have been working on that, and we are looking forward to having a similar facility by ISA and ADB in Asia region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very interesting points raised by you. If we have time, I'll come back to you. Let me move on to the next panelist, Ms. Jenny Ko. She's the investment advisor in Asia, and she's currently advising Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, or GAP. So Jenny is a highly engaged financier with over 20 years broad-based experience spanning public and private sectors, both across developed and developing markets, and in a range of sectors like climate-aligned infrastructure, energy, agriculture, ICT, and financial services. And prior to GAP, she worked with Greensill, Grantco, and Standard Chartered Bank. And interestingly, in 2021, she founded 3i Advisory to help scale up investments in climate-aligned opportunities. So Jenny, GAP brings together government, entrepreneurs, technologies, policies, and financing partners. How are you able to attract donors, and what is the focus of your activities? And how do you promote clean energy investments? Sorry.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Technology, it's too early in the morning for me. Thanks, thanks all. I just want to kind of follow a point on that Santosh actually made. So GAP is actually founded in COP26, so 16 months in sort of, I would say, operational state by 3 well-intended philanthropic funders, Rockefeller Foundation, Bezos Earth Fund, and the IKEA Foundation. So I think the foundation world has always been very active in health, education, where you're very familiar. You see them operating in a very large scale, and I would say the philanthropic community operates in a very different manner than your traditional DFIs or commercial sector. Just adding on to what Santosh said earlier around the blending, right? So the source of philanthropic capital coming into climate change space is very, very new. But I think there is a huge potential for the right compelling opportunities to unleash that source of money. This source of money is very unique in its how it operates and how it functions. And I think we have also, GAP has also supported the works of ISA, I think one of the founding early members. And in the region right now, and both in Africa and in Asia and LAC, GAP is obviously they look at 2 key pillars, right? One is energy transition and energy access. And clearly in energy transition, the challenges of the capital and risk is it's a sort of a more nuanced sort of aspects as opposed to energy access, I would say. And one of the the way we engage, and GAP is not on itself, we recognize we can't do it all, right? So we have indeed partnered with both the likes of the MDBs, the DFI community, because we see them as a very important partner in sort of executing the mission that we have, right? So the sort of instruments that philanthropic capital come in at the most basic level, grants. So they get deployed, don't have to pay them back ever. But there are those so-called free money, they're not truly free, right? So you do have to deliver great ambitions along sort of, I would say, either the decarbonization, taking lots of carbon. So those sort of activities where you require more, I would say, money that does not ask for a return, but the return is in terms of the benefit to the greater good, right? So whether it be the environment, job creation, all the sort of, I would say, KPIs that or impact assessments that we're all very familiar with in the room. Give you an example, like in an energy larger transition country like Indonesia, where there's a lot of remote islands, a lot of diesel plants still currently operating. And then there's obviously the view by the government to sort of convert those to, I would say, solar hybrid, to some extent, even incorporating hydrogen to give more base load sort of nature to replace diesel. One of the things that we are finding, like, the cost, a lot of these countries, like even in Indonesia, keeping the cost of electricity affordable is perennially very important, right? And RE has to compete, solar included, has to compete with baseload fossil fuel, which right now, whether subsidy or no subsidy, is still ultra competitive, right? So for us to, we who want, these countries to transition to greener pathways, I think one of the usual question is like, lower the cost of my tariff, right? And in some of the sort of solutions like digitalization and all this, there's sort of a flaw to how far you can go in reducing the tariff. It's not utility scale. You don't get 2 cents. You might be 25 cents, 30 cents, but that's not good enough for the utility. For them, it's like, do better. So in those instances, how we've come in, and from a philanthropic sense, is essentially to provide something what we call a viability gap. So what would have been BAU would not get us there, or let's say will not get the utility or the country excited about a transition journey. And we've come in to sort of stop gap that, whatever that gap is, right? So that's an example of how we have come in, blending with the normal sources of capital, including the likes of ADB and everyone else, to actually kind of make that transition happen quicker, faster than it would have been without such instruments being in place. So with that, I'll stop there.
Thank you. I like, what you dispel, that grants are not free. Very often everyone thinks that grants are free. So very interesting. So in the interest of time, let me move on to the next panelist, who's Arsan Ali Farouk. He's an investment expert with ADB Ventures and brings with him experience across private capital markets, from private equity to venture debt and project financing to investment banking. So, and prior to ADB Ventures, he was with global private equity of at the State Street Global Advisors. And then he was part of the starting team at Seekers Finance, an innovative financing institution for sustainable development in India, and then started his career with Credit Suisse in 2013. Arslan, is there a need for startups, in the clean energy space? And what is the role played by them? And how are you at ADB Ventures contributing to clean energy, to the clean energy domain?
Sure, thanks. Thanks for the kind introduction, and also it's a very interesting question because when we say is there a need for a startup, it's kind of also an existential question for ADB Ventures, for what we do at the venture capital team. So the startup and the entire VC ecosystem is needed, and it's needed to drive innovation. And what innovation does is innovation drives commercialization and scalability of solutions and products in emerging segments. Innovation happens broadly in 3 different streams. There is business model innovation, there is incremental tech innovation, and there is deep tech innovation. So in business model innovation, we have seen a lot of activity being driven by, say, simple business model innovation of how companies or emerging startups are in managing risk of different stakeholders of the business, how they are structuring leasing or financing, how for instance, they are capturing value in different parts of the business. Moving to the incremental tech innovation, a lot of activity that we have seen, say for example, in spaces like energy efficiency, has been driven by incremental tech innovation, whether it is heat pumps, waste heat recovery, efficient cooling. And then there is deep tech innovation, for example, segments like green hydrogen and then battery technology. These segments have been driven by a lot of deep tech innovation. So all these three streams of innovation are very critical and pivotal in driving commercialization as well as scalability. At ADB Ventures, we have been backing some of the most transformative and fearless founders across different geographies in Asia and in different segments of clean energy. And one of the, apart from backing innovations in these three streams, another theme that we have been backing is the cross-country tech transfer story. So we have backed company, for example, there's a company in Korea, and they have their main business in Nepal in sustainable brick manufacturing. So it's a very interesting tech transfer story. Similarly, we have backed a company in Germany, which has its main impact in India and China. So that's, and in terms of why the VC ecosystem is required to drive all that innovation, is because behind all that, there is a certain amount of risk. And to take that risk, there is an appetite needed for that risk return profile. And VC ecosystem is structured to take on those kind of risk and drive those kind of innovations. To summarize, the way we are looking at it at ADB Ventures, what we want to do is, anywhere in the world, if there is any founder, any fearless founder working on a very interesting problem related to climate change, clean energy, with a direct impact in developing Asia, the first name that he should, come in his head or her head should be ADB Ventures. That's how we are looking to position the VCs, our VC efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Good sales pitch. No, but yes, very, very interesting. As in, you were saying that VCs are taking on the initial risk of catapulting technology, business models, etc. So thank you for that. Our next panelist is Juliet Lusing. She's the Senior Investment Officer at the European Investment Bank. And Juliet focuses on private sector project finance transactions. Her main focus is connectivity and renewable energy projects. And she has recently closed a 1 gigawatt solar project in Uzbekistan. Congratulations. Prior to joining EIB, I can very proudly say she worked at ADB. In fact, Juliet and I were together in the same department. And then she's worked at FMO, the Dutch Development Bank, and started her career with UNDP in the Maldives. So Juliet, your question. You're specializing in project financing. What are the main risks? We've heard risks a lot, right? And barriers for project financing of renewable energy projects.
Thank you for that question. And actually, Santosh, thank you for setting the scene in highlighting the different return percentages, because I think that really lines out very well the different expectations of those return expectations of investors that represents the likelihood of actually losing your money when you go to any of those countries. So again, Germany 7%, India 17%, Argentina 53%, I think you said. As representative of EIB, who is a global investor in all of these countries, I can tell you that as soon as I present any of those projects in all of those countries, to the same risk department, they obviously are going to question me how they think that project in Argentina still deserves our money over the ones in Germany. Obviously, for any bank, resources are scarce, and so we need to think twice on where we want to invest. Obviously, returns, if something goes well in Argentina or India, are higher, but you need to make sure that it is well structured. We owe that to our shareholders, of course, who are ultimately taxpayers. And so we need to spend that money wisely, but also for the people in the countries where we are investing, because they're still energy deprived and they're expecting us to actually finance and finish those projects that we're promising them through tenders, etc. And there I want to highlight that, yes, blended finance is definitely an instrument that is needed, but there's much more needed, because money is just one part of the puzzle. What we often see as an investor, what is missing is the regulatory framework. And if there is not a supportive regulatory framework, then people won't invest, because they're just not sure whether the regulation that is there today will still support them in the future. Or the examples of a panel this morning, ocean energy, which is a great solution for countries like the Philippines or Indonesia, all of the Pacific Islands, but it's simply not written into their regulations, and so there is no tariff for it. And if there's no tariff, who wants to invest, because you don't know what your future cash flows are going to be. And so that is a part where an ADB plays a very important role here in the region, but also the Solar Alliance, with the new products that you're setting up, these facilities that go beyond just financing. The payment guarantee fund, that is exactly what is needed in a lot of these regions. And so I also invest in Africa, and off-takers are weak, and often they don't have the money to pay the next installments. And so there's a need for liquidity backstop, and a guarantee fund like yours can definitely do that. That is what investors are looking for, because you want to make sure that your invested money comes back one day. And of course, there's a lot more, making sure that your environmental regulations are in place, so that there's no surprises once you start building some of these solar plants, etc. And then solar is still relatively easier if you compare that to hydro. The ease of doing business, availability, and transparency in permitting processes. As soon as you have decided that you want to invest in India, you want to make sure that you do get your construction permits. You don't want to go through 5 or 7 years of red tape and still not being sure that you get your access. Technology risks, I think solar has definitely proven itself, but we're now seeing this new wave of floating solar, nearshore, etc. Those are exciting developments, but we need to make sure that it's technology that, again, will make those returns. Going back to government support, especially in project finance, you really need to put the risks on who can take them. Obviously, with a lot of the PPAs that are now in local currency, you want to make sure that you still get the dollars that we send, or the euros in my case, into any country back out of the country. So convertibility, exchange rates, etc., are very important to make sure that all of these, which are relatively easy to construct projects, in the end still make the cash flows that you expect them to do.
Okay, thank you. Some interesting points, and I think later in the panel I'll ask somebody or anybody on the panel, including Joshua, yourself, or Pragya, to respond. How do we mobilize this government support? How can one develop this government capacity? So we'll come back to that. You know, it's a requirement that's been identified several times, but we seem to be talking about it for decades. So I think that's clearly something that we need to address. But thank you for your thoughts. Let me move on to the last panelist, and that is Alamgir Murshid, who is the Executive Director and the CEO for Infrastructure Development Company Limited, or ITCOL, in Bangladesh. And prior to joining ITCOL, he served as the Managing Director and Head of Financial Institutions at Standard Chartered Bank, Bangladesh. He's held numerous senior positions and was responsible for overseeing the global markets at Stanchart, where his areas of experience included foreign exchange, asset liability management, debt capital markets, corporate finance. Alamgir has also made significant contributions to the Bangladesh Foreign Exchange Dealers Association. So, Alamgir, after reading all this, I can say you are a finance wizard, expert. Tell us, how can one channel private sector funds into promoting clean investments? And what are the private investors looking for? You know, despite these high risks that have been identified with such projects and such business environments, what are they looking for so that their funds can be, you know, channeled into such projects?
Thank you, and I think it's good afternoon. You know, the advantage of being the last speaker is a lot of the questions have probably already been answered. But to just, you know, start with ITCOL, which I represent, has been in the forefront of financing most of the renewable energy projects in Bangladesh. In fact, 40% of the renewable energy projects that has been funded in Bangladesh has been through ITCOL. ITCOL is a government entity supporting the private sector, funded by the development partners through the government. So the funds that we channel is predominantly concessional. These are fixed, long-term fixed rate loans. And therefore the advantage that we have as a financial institution is we can lend money at an affordable price for a long term at fixed rate. And on top of that, the government of Bangladesh has been very supportive in supporting ITCOL in providing kind of a foreign exchange risk hedging. They take the whole burden of exchange rate risk on the Ministry of Finance. Now, that is a very good story, as long as you are a development financial institution. Now, the question is private sector. Now, that is where the whole ball game changes. So if I think, you know, the context of Bangladesh would be very much very similar to many of the countries in South Asia, at least, or in the emerging market, where you have a nascent money market, which is very short term, where the banks depend totally on the depositors' short-term deposit, where there's a lack of pension fund, where there is the lack of participation of the insurance companies. The biggest challenge for the private sector financial institution is how do you source long-term liability in the balance sheet. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is risk management. I think my panelists have already alluded to it. The long-term foreign currency borrowing is a challenge for countries like Bangladesh, where you cannot hedge your foreign exchange. And obviously the government would not hedge all your exchange risk. So how do you do that? Pricing is another problem. In countries like Bangladesh, where you don't have a yield curve or a reference rate for even the local currency, it's very difficult to say how you are going to price a 10, 15-year money. Now, in renewable energy, as we all know, that the payback period is at least 6 to 7 years. So you have to provide capital, whether it's debt or equity, to the private sector, at least for a period of 10 to 15 years. So that's another challenge. So the good news is that with partners like ADB, we are working to develop the bond market, because the reliance on banks would not solve the problem. We need to disintermediate the market, we need to bring in new players, and we need to engage the global financial market as well. India has had succeeded in doing this Indian rupee offshore bond through the masala bond and similar bonds. But countries like Bangladesh or Nepal, to some extent Sri Lanka, we are still not there. So I think the access to international financial community through a local currency bond is something that we need to look at. Pricing, again, a big challenge with an inflation rate of over 7%. How do you price something which is affordable? You know, we talked about affordable capital. And most of these renewable energy projects would not be viable if we cannot lend money at something around 5%. So number of challenges there. And again, where the development partners can help us instead of just giving access to cash is obviously the discussion we had is on the guarantee schemes. Because many of the local financial institution or banks might be able to say, you know, even if they agree to lend money for a long term, the question is how do you know, protect from the credit risk of many of as a payment risk as we spoke about. Now we need some of these non-funded risk participation by the development partners or the likes who could at least give us the credit enhancement to these private banks. What we are doing also, you know, to ensure our repayment, we are asking for bank guarantees. And local banks, you know, this appetite for bank guarantee is only so much. We are talking about $30 billion only in Bangladesh for next 10 to 15 years. So the kind of money that we need cannot be, you know, the foreign currency is not the only solution. So to sum up my, you know, the things that we are thinking about to conclude, long-term funding, a mix of local and foreign currency funding, risk management, yield curve. So the host of things that we need to do, you know, it is already accepted that there is no other way but renewable energy or alternative energy is critical. And given the energy prices from the very top, from our prime minister, starting from there, we have a roadmap of, you know, kind of achieving at least 40% of our energy generation from renewables. So that is accepted. It is also accepted that the public, the government alone cannot fight this battle. We need the private sector participation. And therefore, almost 80% of that has to come from the private sector. The other good news is where my optimism comes is, you know, for last 1 year, I think things have there has been a paradigm shift in the entire renewable energy sector. The tariffs have changed, and the fossil fuel driven power and versus the renewable energy power tariffs are making a huge difference. The private sector sees there is a viable business case. The end users, the consumers see there's a cost saving. So there's a perfect business case. Problem is financing. If we can solve that puzzle, I think we're almost there. The technology is there. There's a lot of discussion happening around the technology, the support of ISA, DB, and many of the partners. Now we need to put our heads together to resolve the financing part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. So clearly, we need some sort of a credit enhancement. There's a lot of funds out there, but what's lacking is how to make the projects bankable. And we need to focus on that in order to mobilize private sector financing. So the panelists have been very, very cooperative. So thank you for that. I think what we'll do for the rest of the session is go to the audience, take a couple of questions, and then please introduce yourself, just say which organization you are from, not anything more, and ask your question. If you want to identify the panelists, please say so. Otherwise, anyone on the panel can take the question, and then I will go back to the panelists for their final statement. So any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Sulakshana Jayawardena, Additional Secretary to the President, Sri Lanka. My question is now, when it comes to the financing, now we are talking about energy markets, open access. right? Unlike previous days, that there won't be any long-term power purchase agreements. In that context, how do you see the make this business a viable case? Because bankers' point of view, they are in a best position to make the assessment based on the terms and conditions of the long-term power purchase agreement. Now, the present trend is having energy markets, and you are supposed to sell electricity through energy market mechanism. So, what is your opinion on that? Any panelist can give answer.
Thank you. Let me take another question if there is one immediately from the audience. Okay. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Juliet. I'm with the USAID Papua New Guinea Electrification Partnership, and I'm leading the private sector development in the Pacific as well as in the PNG. So I'm just curious because it's Asia and the Pacific. So how do you, this is more on developing bankable transactions in the Pacific. And for us to mobilize private sector investments, we need to find bankable transactions. And from the panelists, from EIB and from another lady, very interesting session because I've been working with PNG government as well as trying to break the ground for private sector development in Papua New Guinea. And we have a very challenging targets of mobilizing $200 million from the USAID side. And we are only supporting the technical assistance. And we only have like a drop in the bucket catalytic energy fund to mobilize private sector investments and co-fund that with the government, and that includes the local government. So I'm just curious if you can share your experience with the Pacific on how to mobilize private sector investments. I know it's not easy, but maybe you can share to me from the EIB side. Yeah, regulatory framework is really one challenge, and government support all these guarantees and how to de-risk projects. It's like an everyday discussion, but at the end of the day, the key is government commitment. But maybe very interesting from you.
Okay, thank you. Let's take these two questions. And since Juliet identified Juliet as the respondent, so over to you, Juliet, and then maybe Jenny, you can come in.
Yeah, I'll take the last question first. And I think PNG is a very good example indeed of where currency convertibility is a very strong challenge to any investor. So when you do bring dollars or foreign currency into the country, it needs government approval to get it out. And that scares a lot of investors to bring it in the first place because there is no strong commitment or certainty that it can get out again. Well, the country is blessed with a lot of natural resources that will generate hard currency. And so it takes commitment from the government to make sure that anything that is invested in is also allowed to be taken out again. That is part. Indeed, PNG and also the smaller Pacific states either don't have a country rating or a very low one, which makes it very challenging for a lot of banks to invest in, even for an ADB or an EIB. If there is no country rating, where do you put it? We're assuming it's the highest risk by default. Unfortunately, that bankers are very conservative by nature. And that puts limitations on how much you can invest, what kind of money. Obviously, there are all kinds of blended financing for taking higher risk. but those need to be matched with the purpose.
Okay, thanks. Bankers are conservative since we have the Silicon Valley Bank and we have other banks. Sorry, just so at least some bankers are reckless. I'll just go over to Jenny and then I'll come to you, Joshua. Jenny?
I think on PNG, and in fact, it's funny that it reminds me of a deal that Julia and I did years ago. It's actually for satellite, for satellite actually, and we had exactly the same issues that we had to address, right? I think one of the challenges is for PNG is that whilst you have a lot of natural resources, that part of the equation does not suffer some of the challenges you've just highlighted, right? But then if you look on the other side of energy generation, tends to be hydro, that sits in a kind of very different, there needs to be a bit more, I think, at the aggregated level as a country, more cohesion between the different sort of natural resources, energy power generation, and how, as a country, you manage your sort of balance sheet, so to speak, to kind of improve, because you can't address a lack of, if you're going to be a sub-investment grade, you're going to be sub-investment grade for some time to come, right? So that's kind of a given. But I think it's around certainty of where the money is, the hard currency are, and those who need access to that. So I think that needs to be more cohesion. And then secondly, I think with PNG is the largest of all the Pacific Island countries, and projects tend to make sense. But when you go outside of that, then I think there's been a lot of efforts to try to aggregate smaller projects, because, you know, a $1 million project to deliver solar in, I don't know, one of the smaller islands, it's very cost inefficient, right? So, and I think ADB at some point was also looking at some sort of structures around that. I think the donor community recognized that. In my old role in Guaranco, we were basically a credit guarantor to many of these projects where we were looking at aggregation structures. But it's very challenging to aggregate, right? I think there needs to be a more conscious element to do more aggregation. Maybe you can try to address the sort of market-based sort of power sort of pricing environment. I think one good sort of reference point in Asia is actually Philippines, right? They have been quite successful, and the banks took a lot of time to understand how and what that means, right? There are, and clearly you need to build the ecosystem. You can do like contract for difference, that you can essentially lend at the same sort of fixed rate structures, but you need different players in the marketplace to get you there. The bank on itself will not get you there, right? And it takes time. I mean, the Philippines is a well-functioning open market sort of structure. In fact, that's the only thing that's really going in at the moment, right? So there's ways to get over the barriers, but yes, initially it will be quite difficult for the banks to get around, because there's always a preference for certainty of payment if you're looking at a 20-year, right?
Thank you. And I'm sure, Joshua, you have deep insights on this coming, given your experience.
I'll keep it brief. My response to both Sulakshana and the lady who spoke about PNG's from ISA's experience. If you're looking at bankable projects, like you said, one of those things that comes to mind is, of course, success breeds success. And if you're able to show bankable projects, and that's what ISA does in being able to do demonstration projects and work in partnership with governments. So these demonstration projects that we do come mostly out of grants. So there's no, I wouldn't say there's no catch, but there is, it makes it a lot easier to raise something off the ground and show every segment, from investments to the bankability to the risks, to all spheres are addressed through the demo project. And we showcase it. And of course, once it's seen as something successful, then the rest can follow suit on that. That's one. The second is, I know as a bureaucrat, I come as a senior professional bureaucrat from a previous life, and I was posted to Fiji, which is one of your neighboring nations. And there again, it was not just a demo project, it was a bold investment from the Chinese government, and a 10 megawatt waste to energy plant.
And once that was off the ground, it hadn't even had to complete. Just putting it in their place just drew a lot of investor interests into other landfills and places across Suva, Nandi, and also, of course, in Lambasa and other places in Suva as well, sorry, in Fiji as well. The one difference, though, was people are able to use that as a bankable demonstration to other parts. The last point I want to raise is, and like I said, I speak as a former bureaucrat and continue to deal with bureaucrats. We are, as bureaucrats, a very peculiar breed. We've got a lot on our plates. And then, of course, we have the biggest challenge of working with the ministers and making sure the ministers are happy. Ministers love ribbon cutting. So you work with the ministers to be able to put in a project and make sure the project is a success, not just cutting the ribbons. So one of those challenges is to have the national focal points look at bankable projects like we just now spoke about and ensure that they are successful and getting their buy-in. And how we have to do it is to have a joint commitment. And commitment comes immediately, but there are barriers that do not allow us to carry through with our commitments. And the only way we do is look for those barriers, identify them, and work through them and complete. So PNG is one such country we continue to work with, and we have challenges in being able to even complete some of our projects because of delays through the various structures in the government. And those are sometimes barriers we identify and work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very valid point. Demonstration effect can be very strong and can support the acceleration of technologies and scale. Dr. Jayavardhani, I'm aware of your question, a very difficult one. So anybody on the panel would like to address how to finance energy projects without long-term PPAs, given that there is open access in the energy markets? Dr. Alamgir?
Thank you for giving me a PhD, I think.
If you're able to respond, you deserve.
Yes, a very, very relevant question. But, the problem that we are facing as a financial institution is very similar. So when you have a PPA with a government IPP project, that's quite safe. But if we are looking at solar rooftop, for example, where there are two private entities and there's agreement between them, there's a PPA, which is not, a very strong PPA. So how do you support that kind of a project? So what we are doing is a very short-term solution, is we are seeking some sort of guarantee, is a bank guarantee. And as I've spoken, probably companies like Carenco, they are also willing to chip in. So I think guarantee scheme is one big solution. Governments can provide such guarantees. I mean, there can be government-owned entities who might not want to fund the project, but take the risk on a non-funded risk basis. So those discussions are also happening in Bangladesh, where central bank may want to open up a window of providing guarantee schemes. You might debate that's kind of a sovereign guarantee where government is again chipping in. So whether that has certain challenges of the debt ceiling, how much sovereign guarantee you would want to provide, but that is one solution. And of course, bringing in companies like Carenco or other DFIs. Thank you.
If I can just add
So
one
Juliet,
sentence, yeah.
and then
obviously there are markets worldwide where the energy sector works on a merchant market, and that's just a day price of that energy. However, the assets and solar and wind, they take a long time to repay, and so the investments that we do, for example, are up to 20 years of financing to match that repayment period. So as a bank, we want to make sure that also in year 15, there is still a demand for that power. And so you guarantee that normally with a PPA offtake and with a take or pay. And that guarantee mechanism gives a price to the financing that we can provide to such a project. And ultimately, that's what you need to ask yourself is, because if you take that certainty away from the cash flow forecast, it comes at a price. So it increases the cost of financing and therefore ultimately the tariff of a solar project. And so as a government, you need to question yourself, is that worth it? Or do we want the lower tariffs but provide guarantees in the form of PPAs and take or pay? Or do we want that freedom to have one day very high prices in energy, and then the opportunistic view of it can be lower?
I think I will try to guarantee surely away, but when you talk about open access, you are talking about somebody's commitment when things can be bought anytime to have a long-term commitment. This is very similar to the stock market. Some examples you can take from that. There are roles of market makers. These are the institutions which make the market work. So you need somebody who basically buys whenever there's a deficit and supplies when there's surplus. And this would be somebody else doing that job, not the power project. So once you set up an open access market, you need to think of the market regulation mechanism, market stability measures, and market makers. Unfortunately, we have adopted the open access network primarily from the stock exchanges and others, but we have not been able to copy the other frameworks that they have to make it work. So the answer lies there. But guarantees, if we are not able to kind of have a long-term and framework changes, guarantees surely work, but guarantees would come at a much higher cost.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? We still have a few minutes. Okay, let me ask a question to the. Please, sorry, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Thank you. One final question maybe from my side. After overcoming all of these problems, about bankability, many of the Pacific Island countries, Papua New Guinea is an example, and I work for Micronesia, would require viability gap funding. Now, especially because if we want renewable energy to be penetrated at higher levels, then the the battery energy storage systems are needed, and these systems are expensive. So how can one approach the issue of getting viability gaps in advance of selecting the IPP, because it's a chicken and egg situation? You will not be able to determine your tariff unless you have a known VGF in advance. So that's my question on approaching viability gap funds to especially finance the batteries that would then be able to excite in smaller investors to serve the smaller islands. Thank you.
Thank you. Any particular panelists you want to?
No, this is open for all.
Okay.
Of course, I'd appreciate it from the development financial
Please,
institutions.
sure.
Mine is going to be only a part answer to that. And I'll let the other panelists, if they have supporting information. The International Solar Alliance does have a VGF, viability gap funding model. However, if you could speak to Ramesh, who's sitting in the second, I think he's going to be closing the session, so he would be able to provide you further information on that. What we did find with VGF, though, was that smaller amounts do not suit. We'd kept it open perhaps for about more than a year, and we didn't have too many takers. And then Ramesh and his team, working with Pragya, they've found that they might have to increase the amounts. How much is it? How much is currently sitting it on? 10% of the project. And so we cannot, yeah, I can see you shake your head. Yes, it will all work. We bloody well know now that it doesn't work. So we are working on increasing the amount. And input from people like you does really help. So we will be increasing the VGF amounts. So it does then help investors, but we would look at the more the takers, the more the support, and we are prepared to take it further. Thank you.
Jen.
Yeah, no, I think the idea of a VGF, particularly if you're trying to incorporate new technologies, so for example, batteries, where right now on a commercial basis, and also given how the tariffs are sort of arrived at, it can be quite challenging. I think it will be depending on how you run this so-called tenders, to be clear at the tender stage, very clear, is there a VGF available? Because things like that, I will call it more like staple that's applicable to the whole industry is looking to bid. So if you can signal that at that point, it'll be more effective than when the bidder is actually the winner is announced and then this instrument does appears, because the decision to whether you go into a bid or not has already been predetermined. So the VGF can be very powerful to also bring in more investors or into the space, right? Depending on what you're trying to do with the VGF.
Thank you. I've been signaled by the organizers, but I think we still have room for one question, if no? Okay. Let me very quickly go back to the panel, and you have 30 seconds to give your final thoughts. Let me start with my extreme left. Ashley.
Yeah, so on venture capital ecosystem, I'd like to say, first I'd like to congratulate ISA on the progress of your startup challenge in Africa. Very impressive. There's a need for more players in the VC ecosystem, particularly in the climate and clean tech segments. The entire VC ecosystem needs to be strengthened. ADB Ventures needs to be at least 10x the size of what it is right now. I would summarize that we need to strengthen the VC ecosystem further.
I think I'll speak on behalf of the world of philanthropy. I think you see us more actively both at the upstream level with capacity building in governments, all the way downstream, more actively involved in the climate journey, I would say.
I think I'll just reiterate the point that if you are using any kind of facility to channelize capital or unlock the potential, make the facility be very dedicated to the challenge that you're talking about. Don't make it general. Otherwise, it becomes diluted in focus.
In terms of financing, I think there is a great amount of financing available for good projects. I think not just the IFIs and the MDBs, but also the pension funds. Everybody is looking for long-term green investment opportunities. So money is there. The rest of the puzzle really needs to be solved. And so we're all looking for good projects, which starts with properly tendered and good government support. And so that's part of the rest of the puzzle that I think all of us are here to solve, and especially with the support of the ISA as well.
Thank you.
Thank you to the organizer for bringing various stakeholders together. I think, I'd look forward to greater participation of private sector in this kind of forums, so that we can hear the stories from the private financing industry as well. And probably we could also tell them the changes that they have to make in their financial models to really accommodate this green transition.
Maybe as ISA, I could just say that it's the projects which create policies and not the other way around. And from more of a resource mobilization perspective, I think, like Juliet mentioned, monies are available throughout the world with the private sector, with donors, with various philanthropies, with governments. But we need financing vehicles to actually channel them from the various sources to the projects. So the financing vehicles are very necessary. Thank you.
So my task remains now, and a very pleasant one, to thank everyone on the panel. I think this has been a very good discussion, insightful. Most of us knew what the issues were. We know how to solve them to some extent, but what's challenging is to get everything together and come up with a solution that's workable. And as mentioned by Joshua, there's a very strong demonstration effect. So once we are able to have some business models and that operate and show the success, then there would be a scaling up. And each of you were representing different aspects of the environment and right from venture capital. I was just trying to tease you in terms of saying, what is the use of venture capitals? Why do we need startups? I think they're very important. So with this, a big thanks. And I'd request the audience to join me in giving a big hand to the panelists.
Also, may I just thank our moderator, Sujata ma'am, for such an insightful discussion. I think it was a very heavy panel on financing, but we all had very insightful discussion today. And if there are any questions related to projects, related to pipelines, related to new products, please feel free to contact us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing your valuable knowledge, experience on project financing. So I would like to invite remaining seated. So probably organizers may need to take a picture at the end of the session. So I would like to invite Mr. Ramesh Kumar, Chief of UNI, Program and Project Cluster, International Solar Alliance Secretary, to deliver the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for giving me the floor. It was very, very interesting discussions, very interesting discussions. I think many of these aspects would be, go into the design of our product, which is being planned by ISA, because all the aspects, the various dimensions were discussed. So I think all this will be very useful for setting up our fund. I think the innovation has to happen in all directions, whether it is in technological part, financial instruments, and the business models. I think all the three are important, and that gives a kind of comfort to scale up. I think we will be looking at those points when we trigger these funds once that fund is designed. Secondly, one or two points I just wanted to add. This VGF is one innovative product. Of course, it takes me back to 5-6 years back to Indian experience when we had a first VGF scheme. Our idea was to put this money, it's a government money, to attract private investment. So it has to be deployed, it has to in a way promote the efficiency of deployment of the other fund. So that's a very key thing which we tried, and it successfully we could do that. It has in fact triggered a large scale solar projects happening in India. So I think that product also we will be taking it further with the as part of the ISA's efforts. And I think this risk is another area where I think the risk has to be taken by who is capable of taking that risk. And sometimes we pass on the risk to somebody who is not capable of taking it. So what is the risk? Many of the in government setup, most of the time we try to push every risk to the private people who is not capable to take that risk. So that is where a balancing of taking the risk by the government part and the private part has to be balanced. So it also takes me one more issue. When we were talking about a large scale solar parks in India, many of the foreign developers came to us and say that, see, two important things if you make guarantee by the government, then we can give you a lot of investment. One, in terms of land, because we don't understand the land, how you are dealing, how complicated in India it is. So you take care of that part. Secondly, the transmission availability, because we make the project, there is no transmission available, so we will be stuck, our investment happens and you are not able to evacuate. If you take care of these two very important factors, you will attract a lot of funding.
And that is the point where we created the solar parks, and it's amazingly scaled in India. These two, so this is one area I think the risk distribution between the government part and the private part need to be very delicately balanced. So then only it effectively comes as a good public-private partnership. I think public-private partnership is very important because the government money or institutional money are limited. And so we need to attract more private investment by taking care of all these issues. I think we had a wonderful discussion today, including the capacity building, all aspects to be blended into that. So many thanks for the panel, and the moderator was so prompting questions to the people, and that brings out the best of the things from the people. So many thanks for that. Yeah, thank you.
And may I add to what Ramesh sir just said, if everybody's noticed, it's a 50-50 panel with equal representation of both males and females. And thank you to all the panelists today for taking our time and for such an insightful discussion. And I'd also like to thank ADB and ISA team as well for all the hard work that goes behind in putting up this panel. So Mr. Acharya is right here, and of course the projects team and Joshua. So thank you so much.